proclamation. I'll ask the council if they would join me. Good evening to everyone. We're going to begin. We have a special proclamation this evening. As you're all aware, during our last meeting, we celebrated the fact that this is Hispanic Heritage Month. And so today, we are thrilled once again to present to you a group, a Christian fraternity that's been with us here in the city of Long Beach, coming from St. Mary's of the Isles Roman Catholic Church. This Christian fraternity has been a part of the Long Beach culture for 29 years, and that's worthy of applause. And so at this time, I'm going to ask if the Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros would come forward. And this time, I'm sure we'll have a few words from Mr. Bulkhead. So the proclamation reads, whereas Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros is a Christian fraternity with a chapter in the city of Long Beach at St. Mary of the Isles Roman Catholic Church, and whereas the Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros is a centuries-old fraternity founded in Peru and boasting thousands of devotees worldwide. And whereas on October 27, 2019, the Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros will celebrate its 29th annual procession of the image of El Señor de los Milagros through the vicinity of their parish church. And whereas October is celebrated as Hispanic Heritage Month, and the city of Long Beach is proud of the contribution of the Latino community to our city, and now and therefore the City Council and the City Manager of the City of Long Beach issue this proclamation in recognition of the cultural, fraternal, and charitable contributions of Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros, signed by Mr. Moore, Council President, John Bento, Council Vice President, Tommy Diamond, Council Member, Anthony Aramo, Council Member, Scott Mandel, Council Member, and John Incorando, our City Manager. We celebrate you, we say to you, gracias por tu servicio, felicidades, y Dios bendiga. We'll ask the council if they would join us with a total.
welcome to the regular meeting of the Council of the City of Long Beach on Tuesday, October 2nd, 2019 at 7 p.m. Roll call. Councilmember Diamond. Councilmember Ramos. Councilmember Mandel. Vice President Bendo. President Moore. With the record indicate the presence of Acting City Manager John Moreno and Acting Corporation Counsel Greg Kalnitsky. Now so to the call.
All right, we'll ask our Vice President Bendo if he could give us the pledge at this time.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We want to welcome you this evening. At this time, we'll have a report from our Acting City Manager.
Thank you. I'd like to start off with first, there's been several comments being made on social media concerning an internal memo that I disseminated to City Council and department heads last week. Due to a leak, some members of the public are completely misrepresenting something that was strictly an internal message to ensure that the chain of command was followed internally. At no point in the internal memo would I be speaking directly to residents about who they can and cannot contact. On to normal business. Moving on, the David Gusto Ocean Learning Center, together with the City of Long Beach, celebrated the 34th International Coastal Cleanup Day on Saturday, September 21st, for a global event where volunteers and environmental groups took to the beach to collect litter and spread awareness about trash in our oceans. More than 275 volunteers congregated over 2 hours, covering 6 beaches and picking up 210 pounds of litter, including 1,404 cigarette butts, 1,272 small plastics, 576 bottle caps, 501 food wrappers, 287 straws and stirrers, and countless other items, all totaling 6,275 pieces. These and other items were all reported back to the Ocean Conservancy for further analysis on the state of our coastal environment. Asphalt overlays. The city's pleased to announce that the Department of Public Works will be continuing work on its annual asphalt overlay project. The week's overlay schedule will include East Walnut Street between Pacific Boulevard and Roosevelt Boulevard, the intersection of Roosevelt Boulevard and East Walnut Street, Roosevelt Boulevard between East Park Avenue and East Walnut Street, Monroe Boulevard between East Park Avenue and East Walnut Street, the intersection of East Olive Street and Franklin Boulevard, and East Broadway between Franklin and Neptune Boulevard. Street overlays are an effective way to increase the life of the road beyond it, essentially stopping the domino effect of road deterioration. Climate smart. The City of Long Beach is now the first community in Nassau County and just the third on Long Island to become a certified climate smart community. Climate Smart Community is a New York State program that helps local governments take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to a climate changing. The city accomplished an array of projects to achieve this designation, such as building a greenhouse gas inventory, upgrading streetlights to more efficient LED technology, adopting rooftop solar on government buildings, conducting a climate vulnerability assessment, participating in the National Flood Insurance Program, community rating system, hosting climate-related public events, and much more. You can visit the city's website for more details. Earning this designation was a joint effort. I'd like to thank Ryan McKinnon, Tyler Hoffman for developing the grant application, as well as Joe Fabrizio and Scott Evans, Patty One, and their departments, all their hard work and Sandy, which helped get us this certification. The Long Beach Police Department will host a Coffee with a Cop event tomorrow, October 3rd, at Dunkin' Donuts in the Long Beach Plaza from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Feel free to stop by and chat with Police Officer Bonnie Kerr. Congressman Captain Rice has announced that the Long Beach Volunteer Fire Department has been awarded $98,181 in federal grant funding to purchase new life-saving defibrillators for their ambulances. The funding was awarded through FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, which provides grants directly to fire departments for projects that enhance public health and safety, as well as health and safety of emergency response personnel. On behalf of the city, I would like to thank Congresswoman Rice for helping us obtain the funding for this life-saving equipment that will benefit the residents of the city of Long Beach. We'd also like to thank Fire Commissioner Scott Evans and the volunteer force for helping us obtain this important funding. In celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, please join your neighbors friends and neighbors tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Long Beach Cinema Floor for a free showing of Dora and the Lost City of Gold, presented by the City of Long Beach and the Long Beach Latino Civic Association. Tickets are available to pick up at the Recreation Center front desk. The Order of Ancient Hibernians Irish Day Parade begins on Washington Boulevard and West Beach Street at 11 a.m. on Saturday, October 5th. There will be vendors, rides, music, food, and raffles along West Beach Street until 5 p.m. Additionally, the City of Long Beach will present a Kids Fun Zone from 12 to 4 in the West Schoolyard on Maryland Avenue, including rides, games, a DJ, and more. A special thank you to the Long Beach Recreation Department for making this family-friendly program possible. As we take part in the celebration of Irish heritage, we ask that participants abide by the rules and act in a safe manner so everyone can enjoy the festivities. As such, if you see something, say something by contacting the Long Beach Police Department. Immediately dial 911 for emergencies or call 516-431-1800 for non-emergency when witnessing any violations. The city's annual Fall Festival will be held at Kennedy Plaza on Saturday and Sunday, October 12th and 13th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There will be craft vendors, a carousel, pumpkin patch, petting zoo, music, hay rides, and more. The costume parade begins at the rec fields on Saturday at 12 noon. You can visit longbeachnewyork.gov for more information. We owe a debt of gratitude to the city employees helping the Fall Festival, a tremendous event, in particular Rosemary Holton and Kerry Ann Troy, who take the lead every single year. Finally, as a reminder, the Farmers Market and Arts and Plaza is back in Kennedy Plaza on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Shop local produce and artisanal products while listening to great music. And that's my report.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Acting City Manager. I have a brief report this evening. I want to remind everyone that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we are once again encouraging our residents to move forward with screenings. There are several free screenings, not only here within our city, but also across Nassau County. We're hoping that you will take this time during the month of October to move forward with your screenings, because every screening can save a life. Secondly, we want to remind you that this is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're asking that you will spread the word, that you will share information, but that also you will take the time to have that conversation with your neighbors as well as with your families. Since our last City Council meeting, a special meeting was held on Tuesday, September 24th. Mr. John Miranda was appointed as the acting city manager. Last week, a letter was issued to the Comptroller's office without the entire council's approval. While social media focused on a vote which never took place, the issue at hand was actually the protocol for sending the communication before sharing this communication with the entire council. The council and the acting city manager have addressed the issue. Councilman Bendo will provide the update at the end of my report. The council would like to thank all of the members of our community who attended our work session, which was held also on Tuesday, September 24th. We are also extremely grateful for all of our staff who provided detailed reports. We look forward to having another work session in the near future. The council is actively working to coordinate a date as well as a process to meet with the prospective vendors with respect to our concessions for next year. We also look forward to Irish Day, the Irish Day Parade, this Saturday. This is an annual event which brings the entire community together, and we look forward to seeing all of our friends and neighbors at the event on Saturday morning. The council once again extends a happy and healthy new year to all of our Jewish neighbors. This concludes my report. At this time, I'll ask Councilman Bendo if he could read his statement.
Okay, thank you. It's really not a statement. I just want to read into the record a letter that was sent yesterday to the Office of the New York State Comptroller, to Ira McCracken, the Chief Examiner. Mr. McCracken, we, 3 of the 5 members of the City Council, hereby advise as follows. The draft audit report prepared by Mr. Capozzolo and submitted by Mr. Kalnitzky, the Capozzolo response, is not approved by the City Council. Without the benefit of new independent counsel, we are not in a position at this time to respond on the merits of anything contained in the Capozzolo response. 3, for the same reason, we are not in a position at this time to respond to the draft audit. Should you wish to discuss this with us, please contact us at our email addresses above. Very truly yours, Anissa Moore, President, John Bendo, Vice President, and Scott Mandel, Member.
time is a public hearing for an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Long Beach regarding water and water distribution.
Good evening, members of the council. This is basically what I've discovered to be a scrivener's error. This was spotted by our water department. In the City of Long Beach, we have to fill for a minimum of 12,000 gallons, and the code that was enacted in May of 2019 provides that it shall be $4.50 for each 1,000 gallons used. The minimum charge is 12,000 gallons, but it says that the fee for that would be $53.98. 450 times 12 is $54, not $53.98. This is simply a scrivener's error. It's not costing the residents anymore. This is just a correct mistake that was made in the ordinance.
So once again, just to make it clear to everyone that this is indeed a clerical error, is this what you're saying?
Yes, I think it is, yeah.
Okay, are there any questions from the members of the council? Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll now ask members of the community, our residents, are there any questions with respect to the item that's being presented as ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Long Beach for the water and water distribution? Any questions at this time? Yes? I think I recognize Malin.
Hi, thank you. Malin Studart, I was about 836. Just wondering how this is going to affect taxes in any ways. Whenever I'm reading the agenda, it really lacks in detail. So can you just be specific on what this is going to affect the residents and monetarily as well, please? Thank you.
Well, as I previously said, the code provides that each resident is billed for a minimum of 12,000 gallons of water per quarter. The charge per 1,000 gallons is $4.50. And if you multiply $4.50 by the minimum, which is 12,000 gallons, you get $54, not $53.98, which is currently written in the code. You need to fix that. That's all.
Are there any other questions at this time? Yes, Mr. Lester.
I don't think you heard the question. She asked how it would impact. Okay, so what she's asking is how does it go up from last year to this year? Okay, I don't understand. I mean, I'm sure the city has calculators, and even though it's an 8 cents a year error, I don't understand how the math could be wrong. But what she was asking was, how does it impact? Not to go over the math again, that's clear to everybody.
I haven't reviewed what the rates were before they were changed in May. This is what's in front of me right now, is fixing this ordinance from May of 2019. That's when it was changed. So you had a question about how it was going up. I think it would have been relevant to ask it in May.
Well, that's what she was asking.
I'm not sure. I don't have that information. I don't know how much the water is.
Nobody here knows how much it went up? Okay, thanks.
We're just trying to get clarification. What do you? Was that your question, though, Mr. Lester? Before you walk away, I just want to make sure that we covered.
No, that was her question.
That was her question.
I just have to interpret it for you guys.
Okay, maybe we didn't understand the question. Thank you for the clarification.
We thought, can everyone
Yeah,
hear
we're
me?
good. You're good.
I believe that increase in rates were brought to the floor in April. I think it's the April 24th meeting of the City Council. It was approved at $54 of a minimum. It just was a typo, if you wish. Now this resolution is to correct the typo. City residents are already charged that rate.
Correct. So we're not adding any additional monies towards the bill.
From
Thank
last
you for the
year?
clarification.
Yes, you are. You're increasing it from last year.
No, in terms of the clerical error, we're speaking to the clerical error. We're not speaking to,
That wasn't her question.
okay, well,
How
then
much
maybe
did it go up?
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions with respect to this item that's being presented? Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Onto the regular calendar, item 1 is an ordinance to amend the code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach regarding water and water distribution. The hearing has been held on this item already. Item 2 is a resolution authorizing the acting city manager to enter into agreements for auto body repair services for the city of Long Beach vehicles on an as-needed basis.
Okay. Ask our acting city manager, Miranda, to address item number 2.
So I supplied to the council, repairs for automotive damage to the bodies of the truck is something that we shop out. We always have. 3 years ago, the purchasing clerk noticed that the repairs were starting to approach the $20,000 annual limit where we would have to go out to bid. So in order to be able to efficiently repair vehicles that were damaged, we bid a contract then, and that contract was over. I supplied to the council the previous contract and the new contract with the rate increases. Each time the vehicle has to be repaired, we get pricing from all three, and even if the labor rates may be higher for one vendor, the overall repair cost may be cheaper. Last year, we spent about $37,000 that wasn't covered by insurance. That comes out of the auto repair line, the general repair line in the city garage, which is about $575,000 this year. But that's for all auto repairs. The total cost for all repairs last year was $92,500. Most of the damaged vehicles are emergency response vehicles, police cars, and fire trucks. And those we do collect insurance on for the most part. There were only and one transportation and 2 DPW vehicles. They're infrequent. I can't predict how many accidents we'll have next year, but hopefully it's none. But the council now has all the information they need. And I would recommend proceeding. And again, it was brought up, should we do this in-house? Unfortunately, we have to hire people with expertise to do the body work. And as you can see last year, just quickly, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there was maybe 20 repairs. So we have a person sitting around waiting for accidents and not really accomplishing anything else. So I think it still makes sense to contract this out.
Are there any questions at this time from the council? Questions?
I just want to, acting city manager Miranda, I just want to clarify, the nature of these repairs is not something that practically done in-house.
Correct. We don't have the facilities. You need special paint booths and,
Can you just describe what some of these repairs would be?
This might be if a police car was in an accident, damaged bumpers. I don't have listed what the exact repairs were for, but these are mostly accidents, so they involve getting parts, in the shop, new bumpers, new quarter panels, new doors, sometimes new engines and engines damaged in the accident. And one thing we do, fire trucks all go out to Audis because Audis is the approved dealer by Ferrara Fire Trucks who supply all the fire engines and trucks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time from members of the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll now ask our residents, members of the public, are there any questions with respect to item number 2? Yes. Myron, student.
Thank you. I asked a question about just the same thing in the last city council meeting, given we had a different city manager, so the situation has changed. But what I'm wondering is, if it goes through insurance, why do we need to allocate $90,000 towards this repair?
We are not allocating $90,000. Last year's repairs totaled $92,000. Only we recovered almost all of that insurance, with the exception of $37,000. We are somewhat have deductibles, and we also are somewhat self-insured on some things. So we actually the $92,000 that was spent, we recovered almost $60,000. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Samantha?
Good evening, Sam Pinto, Long Beach. Two questions. The first one was brought up last meeting in regards to take-home vehicles. Is the city accountable and liable to handle the claims for take-home vehicles when the person is not working?
I haven't had an accident with anybody that's had a take-home vehicle, so I haven't addressed that, but I will give you an example. Somebody who does have a take-home vehicle, had a couple of people get red light tickets, and those people have been made responsible to pay for those tickets, so I assume it would be the same way, unless they were in the performance of their duty on their way to work, to go to an emergency in the middle of the night, or anything like that, I'm sure we would cover them, but if it was just in terms of their community, we have to review that. If they were covered by insurance, our insurance would still cover it, or if it was caused by a vehicle whose insurance would cover if they were at fault. So it's kind of it's a multi-answer
The
question.
expectation is the person wasn't in the process of doing their official duties, it would not be covered by city claims. So let's say a person has a take-home vehicle, they're going out for dinner with their family and they crash a car. Who covers them?
Okay, so we'll have our corporation counsel who can speak to any of the liability issues.
You shouldn't be using your take-home vehicle for personal use.
Please use your microphone.
City employees shouldn't be using take-home vehicles for personal use to get them to and from work and work duties. But with that being said, it's defined by the insurance policy what's covered and what's not.
Okay. Second question is, does the city, I know you said just a moment ago we can't really plan for how many accidents we have. Does the city have an accident or crash prevention program or defensive driving program or, any sort of diligence that we do for our drivers to help prevent accidents so hopefully we get less claims?
That's something that we're actually discussing in the safety committee. We're trying to reduce our insurance expenses, and that's one of the avenues that we're exploring is to have a universal defensive driving course to anybody who drives city vehicle.
Great idea, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Leanne Baker. I live in the President Street area of the city. I don't like to give out my personal address. This is Street Live. Mr. Miranda, you had just stated that approximately $37,000 was not collected as some of the vehicles are self-insured. Could you please elaborate why we would not collect that money? Because that would equate to a person's salary for a year. And what is it we're not insuring that would cost us out of pocket?
Well, if you're self-insured, that means you don't have insurance and you have to pay for everything. And sometimes for insurance policies, there's deductibles that the city has to pay before the insurance kicks in. So it's not an option to recoup those funds.
Sir, I am aware of insurance. I actually was a paralegal in insurance defense, plaintiff and defense, so I am aware of how that policy works. Could you please answer my question? Why would we not insure like a regular insurance policy? Why would we just take the brunt of that as a liability for the city?
It's a financial analysis that my office doesn't perform, but at times it's cheaper to be self-insured than to pay for insurance.
Well, we spent $37,000, so if we had insurance, would we be able to recoup that money as opposed to paying a premium?
Like I said, it's a financial analysis that's done. Sometimes it's not worth it to be insured if the insurance is very expensive.
Who would I speak to go ahead and get a copy of that under a FOIA so I can review that for my own opinion?
Review what?
It's what you're just now telling me.
Well, if you...
There has to be an analysis, and it has to be public. It has to allow people to look at it, because I'm going to tell you, I don't have a lot of confidence in what's going on in our city. We're number 3 in a financial mess. So when you're saying for an analysis, I'm asking you, one, who's doing it? Because, almost $40,000 a year is equate to some people who have a yearly salary of almost $40,000 a year. That's a lot of money. And, when you start adding this up with all this, well, an analysis. Okay, where is it? How can I see it? Why do you think we're number 3 in the state for being bankrupt? That's why I'm asking you. I'm very upset with this city. Extremely. I think we need to clean house and start over.
Okay, so I think you've raised some excellent points. I think at this time, being that you do have expertise in this area, if you kindly just send via email or forward the email to the council, at least we can begin to look at some other options. We would welcome that information.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
President.
you. Are there any other questions this time, Mr. Lester?
vehicles are self-insured. That's the case in the city. How many of our vehicles are self-insured?
I don't know which vehicles are self-insured.
Why would we self-insure a vehicle? I can understand self-insuring other things, but a vehicle where somebody can get hit and there's a tremendous liability, why would we self-insure vehicles? And how's that decision made to self-insure which particular vehicles? Does anyone know? Could we look into that? Because it
I've already
doesn't.
made a note of this, Mr.
Okay,
Lester.
it really does. I can understand deductibles, but self-insuring vehicles, that's a new one for me.
Well, I think we still need some further clarification, and I think we'll bring that back to this body during the next meeting. Because we'd like a complete list, as we stated last time, with respect to the inventory as well.
And the criteria why certain vehicles would be self-insured and the rest wouldn't be.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? All right, we'll move on to item number 4.
Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to the acting city manager to enter into and renew the agreement with the Atlantic Beach Fire District.
I'm going to ask our Commissioner Hammond if he could come forward at this time. Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening. This is a renewal of a contract that we've had for the last 30 years to what used to be the West Atlantic Beach Fire District, which they now changed their name to the Atlantic Beach Fire District, which covers the area approximately from the Sands Beach Club all the way west to west of the Atlantic Beach Bridge. Like I said, we've had this contract for 30 years. They have approached us to renegotiate the contract, and that's why we're here tonight. They have outsourced for paramedic services that will cost the Atlantic Beach Fire District $75,000 a year. That gives them a paramedic responding to their EMS alarms 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They come to the city and asked us to offset that cost. We went back and forth, and obviously they were looking for a bigger number, and we settled at $37,500, which is 50% of the cost of that paramedic. Obviously, that does lower the cost of the contract, $37,500 a year for the first 5 years of the contract. Being that we're already into this fiscal year, we asked them to, for the first year of the 5-year contract, pay the full amount, and then we would multiply the $37,500 by the 4 years and take it off for 4 years. So we would not lose any income in our budget of income for this fiscal year.
Okay.
They have a renewal clause for an additional 5 years, asking us at that time to offset the cost at $39,000 and change for that additional 5 years. That's where we are tonight. I know I emailed everybody, trying to answer everybody's questions the best I could with 10 hours notice, but if anybody has any additional questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Okay. Are there questions now at this time from members of the council?
And thank you. I know I was driving you nuts today with a lot of questions. And just one, if they're paying Cedar her $75,000 for a paramedic, why wasn't there consideration to them paying for our paid paramedics to perform that service?
Right. Well, they did approach us for that. First, there were some contractual issues since the Professional Firefighters Association is the primary responders in the city of Long Beach and the East Atlantic Beach Fire District. The West Atlantic Beach or Atlantic Beach Fire District is not listed in their contract. So that would have had to entail some type of contract negotiation. On top of that, for us to supply the additional paramedics, to not give the residents of the city of Long Beach who are paying the majority of the cost of this paramedic, we would need to hire probably 2 additional paramedics. Just the salary alone for the 2 additional paramedics is $82,000 and change, not including the fringe benefits. That cost probably would have been in the area of $160,000 for the city. Seeing that, it's $37,500 to keep the contract and maintain what we're providing down there seemed like the better deal.
Okay, thank you.
And so just for clarification, based on your most recent statement, you're saying that if the professional firefighters, if they're already there, but for whatever reason, the contract has not been negotiated, but they're already actively engaged, why can't we just use this group so that we wouldn't have to pay the $37,500?
Well, if we use the on-duty people that were here and they were tied up in a fall in Atlantic Beach, and somebody was at our recreation center having a heart attack, and we used one of the AEDs we supplied for down there, and there would be no ambulance to respond because they'd be tied up in Atlantic Beach. So our EMS services are limited and stretched thin. You know, that's a discussion for another day of hiring additional paramedics just to staff and protect the city of Long Beach. But at this point, this seems like the better deal.
Do you have any other questions from members of the council? Seeing none at this time, we'll ask our residents. Question? Yes, Karen McGinnis? Good evening.
Good evening, Karen McGinnis, 102 Pennsylvania Avenue. At this point in time, I really question entering into not what is a 5-year contract, is a 10-year contract. I do not understand why the city would consider that at this time, even though this is revenue. Primarily because I don't feel enough adequate financial analysis was done. My main example of that is that while we get $37,500 off the first year, off the first 5 years, and it increases to $39,250 for the second 5 years, you're assuming that nobody's getting paid more. So that means the city is eating the full cost of everybody's increases in salaries and benefits. This is a rookie mistake, and I think you should get somebody like CMA to perform analysis on this contract before you pass it.
I want to make clear that the second 5 years is an option, and as the contract says, it would only be agreed upon by mutual consent of the City of Long Beach and the Atlantic Beach Fire District. So at any time between now and the end of this first 5 years, this can be renegotiated. We do not have to enter into the other 5-year agreement. It's just allowing it to roll into it if the city, and at the end of this 5-year contract, I believe we'd have to be back here again for the council to approve that additional 5 years, and it would be open for negotiation at that point.
Just one other thing I think might address Ms. McGinnis's point. The people involved that we're talking about here are the volunteer ambulance drivers. They're not the paid ambulance drivers. So there are no salaries involved.
But we can assure them so there's
Yes, well, I assume so.
Yes, the vehicles are insured, and we do carry insurance for our members who operate down there, workers' comp and liability.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, Sam Pinto and then Mr. Lester.
Good evening, Sam Pinto, Long Beach Professional Firefighters. I actually have a handful of questions. I'm wondering if we want to do a back and forth engagement or have me answer questions first.
I think at this time we need to get the questions answered, so go
Okay.
ahead and start.
First question, when is this contract starting?
The existing contract expires 12/31/19, so this will take effect January 1st.
Is it possible that we can table this contract to get better understanding? Would there be any shortfalls in regards to tabling it to get a better understanding of the council and the residents?
So hold that one.
I believe the Atlantic Beach Commissioners are under a gun to submit their budget. It was actually due, I believe, at the end of September to the town of Hempstead, who collects their taxes for them. I believe that would open us up for them to look elsewhere for the entire service. I I know there are two other fire departments on the other side of the bridge, both the Lawrence Cedars and Inwood Fire Department, that would take it in a heartbeat. Inwood Fire Department had the contract for over 50 years before we got it 30 years ago. So that is that risk. It was on for prior meeting. It was pulled because I was unable to be here. And I know I've gone back and forth with all the council members to answer a lot of the questions.
Okay. Third question?
Sure, understandable. Real quick, just so you know, I emailed the city manager and the fire commissioner about 6 weeks ago because I received word from members of Atlantic Beach that they weren't happy with the delivery of service being given by Long Beach Fire Department, and there was conversation of Long Beach being in breach of their contract. He responded to me, how'd you hear that? And he never responded ever again. I'm sorry, the city manager responded, how'd you hear that? And then he never responded again, even though I asked him questions. Which I don't understand why he was trying to maintain that dialogue, but he's not here anymore. So the question is why are we being borne the difference of this $37,500? And how many calls does Atlantic Beach call for the city of Long Beach?
In 2018, we responded to Atlantic Beach 176 times, 72 of them being EMS. From the hours of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, we are the primary EMS agency for the Atlantic Beach Fire District. During the daytime hours, it is very hard to get, especially an advanced life support crew from the volunteers to respond down there. As the national standard, everywhere throughout the country is going to paramedic type EMS care. It is the golden standard. It is what people are looking for to be treated in the field by paramedics, an extension of a hospital emergency room. We were unable to guarantee that to them based upon our current system. And that's when they reached out to Lawrence Cedarhurst, and they struck a deal with Lawrence Cedarhurst, and then came to us and asked us for the concession.
Okay, is the medic that they're providing, so just so we understand, Atlantic Beach is not hiring a paramedic, they're retaining a medic from Lawrence Cedars Fire Department. So now the city of Long Beach, because we were unable to provide the service in our contract, are now subsidizing another fire department to deliver that service. Meanwhile, we do have resources in town that are able to handle the call volume. Very simply, we handle 4,000, 4,600, 4,800 calls a year. Majority of them are EMS. Commissioner just stated there's only about 150 calls going to Atlantic Beach. 75 of them are EMS. So we really don't have an overwhelming burden being caused by this contract, and it would make sense to use all our available resources. With that being said, it really doesn't make sense to me, and I have not seen, as president of the union and seeing the collective bargaining agreement, that there's anything contractually wrong with us going to the paid force going to Atlantic Beach. I don't see it, I don't know it, and we'll be glad to provide that service on behalf of the city. There's nothing in our contract that says that we can't be primary for everything. And we're willing to offer that service, and I don't believe that it'll be an overwhelming burden of 75 EMS calls a year compared to our 4,000 plus that we do every year, that we shouldn't be able to provide that service easily. And I also don't agree with the fact that we need that much more staff, because oftentimes in Long Beach alone, we get 2, 3, or 4 calls. And we haven't increased our staff over time with the 2, 3, and 4 calls happening at once. So saying that 75 calls a year is less than, think about how many days are in a year, really would need to add 2 more personnel. Lastly, I'd just like to bring up that this contract is due for 5 years, right? Atlantic Beach Rescue is paying $75,000 for a single fly car first responder, which is not guaranteed to be a medic, because I know a few of them. They're also critical care technicians. They're not all paramedics. They're paying $75,000 a year. Long Beach is paying half. Long Beach is only receiving $96,000 a year or less to provide an entire fire department. Think about it. Who's getting the better deal? Is Long Beach undercharging? Is Atlantic Beach paying too much? Or are we now serving the needs for Lawrence Cedars to cover the taxes compared to us providing the service that we guarantee? Thank you.
All right. Did you want to respond to this?
Like I said, for the last 30 years, we've had this contract. For the last 30 years, under normal circumstances, the paid firefighters have not responded down there except in a few emergent situations. Some working fires, some serious aided cases. You can, as a council, I believe, decide to give this work to the bargaining unit. It then will become their work for perpetuity. And at some point, down the road, I'm sure that the taxpayers will pay for this. But I'm the fire commissioner, I'm telling you where we are with what we have. This is new, and you as the legislative body can decide to do with it how you see fit. And then I'll leave you with that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lester? Thank you, Mr. Pinto.
Oh, just want to say, if we could table this, no more discussion, it'd be great.
It was noted, thank you.
I have to echo what Mr. McGinnis said. I don't understand how you can not enter into, even put out there with the option to renew a contract that goes on for 10 years without it going up 1 penny. It's as if you think that the prices won't go up in the next 10 years. And that's what we're putting out there. And I don't think that's fair for taxpayers because you know the prices are going to go up. Even if it's just gas. Let's say nobody got a raise in 10 years, which in this city is not happening. But even if it's just gas, the price is exactly the same. Well, actually, we're losing money because Atlantic Beach is giving a raise to their paramedic, so we're absorbing that raise. So we're actually getting less money the second 5 years. What kind of planning? Who actually drafted this? Does anyone know? No. All right. Thanks. Well, they're not asking the question.
Once again, like I said, the second 5 years is a option
It states option to renew.
based on a
in the
mutual agreement.
legislative.
If that's the sticking point and the council wants to amend the resolution and just do the 5 years, and then during this 5-year term, time plan for changes that the legislative body may see fit, you can do that. I think we're taking the risk of not at least approving the first contract tonight. I think we're taking the risk of losing the entire contract. I can't tell you that will happen, I can't tell you it won't happen, but it's definitely a risk.
Thank you.
Nobody's saying anything about I'm not saying anything about not approving the first contract. But once again, we're faced with the situation, if you don't do it tonight, we're in trouble. Once again, that's not planning. Sitting there and saying 10 years from now, the price will be exactly the same. Yeah, yes, it does say, it doesn't actually say it says it's an option. But why would you even put it on paper? As if you know in 10 years, as if you think in 10 years prices won't go up at all. It puzzles me, that's all, I'm sorry.
No problem. Are there any other questions and or comments? Or can I say Gusler?
Good evening, Jay Ross from Long Beach. I would also ask that you guys take a look. I know you tabled it last meeting, but really, there's a lot about what's not to like, and the fact that the West Atlantic Beach Fire Commission is under a deadline to submit their budget to the town of Hampton really isn't our problem. I don't think we should rashly rush into a contract because they waited until the last minute to start negotiations. And in any event, on the substance of it, the fact that they're contracting out for a paramedic from another department, that paramedic is, first of all, not a transporting paramedic, which ours are. We meet you at the scene, we evaluate you, we load you into our ambulance, we take you away. This is a guy in a fly car who's basically going to roll up, evaluate you, and call for other resources. You know what those other resources are likely to be? Us. So we'll be sending our people down there anyway. The other thing is this assumes that their paramedic, their hired paramedic is going to be available for all of those calls 24 hours, 7 days a week. They're not. And when they're not, guess who's going to get that call? We are. So the 30 years, however we've been doing it, notwithstanding, the bottom line is there really isn't any competition with this contract. I certainly wouldn't sleep any better as a resident of West Atlantic Beach knowing that there's a bridge between me and my emergency responders. So we're really kind of imagining that there's some competition for this contract where there really is none. This is a captive audience. And I'm not saying that we should exploit the fact that they're a captive audience, but we should at least be covering our costs associated with providing this service. The residents of Long Beach, and I've said this on past renewals of this contract, the residents of Long Beach should not be subsidized in these other districts. I'm all for being a good neighbor. I'm all for helping them out in their time of need. But we shouldn't be providing service to them at a lower cost than we provide it to the taxpaying residents of our own district.
Good evening.
Good evening. Michael Delory, Long Beach. This is going to be very quick. If you do amend it or if you adopt it tonight, all that I ask that you do is just change in the area resolution down here where it says, resolved by the City Council of the City of Long Beach, New York, that, and insert acting. And then in the very last line on the bottom where it says provisions as, and just insert acting. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions and or comments? Yes. Commissioner.
I want to clarify one comment, like Mr. Guster did bring up, the paramedic does respond down there in his fly car. The Atlantic Beach Rescue Incorporated has an ambulance, and if it gets a driver, it will respond to the scene, and the paramedic or EMTCC, the Advanced Life Support Provider from Lawrence Cedars Rescue, will get on that ambulance and transport that patient. So our ambulance would not have to respond down there. There are times that our ambulance might have to respond down there if the Atlantic Beach Rescue Ambulance doesn't get out during those hours of 6 in the morning till 6 at night. But now we can respond down there with just the chauffeur, and once again, that EMTCC or paramedic can get on our ambulance. So it does save us personnel and a lot of times our vehicle responding down there.
Commissioner, did you do an estimate on how many calls might be reduced during the day as a result of them having that paramedic for our response down there?
Since the paramedic has been in service the last 2 months or so, it has cut our EMS responses down by more than half, that our ambulance does not have to respond down there. So it leaves that ambulance sitting here in the center of Long Beach, so it is available if we need it within the city.
Just one other question, please. So if the patient is transported in our ambulance, does the Lawrence Cedarhurst paramedic EMT, whatever the person's qualifications, do they ride in our ambulance with the patient?
That is correct. All the EMTCCs and paramedics are New York State certified. One other thing that was brought up, as far as the cost, even with the reduced contract based upon the amount of calls we responded there last year, we received almost $580 per call on the breakdown of the new rates. Once again, there's no salary involved. There is some wear and tear on the vehicles, and fuel are only costs. And based upon my estimation that I emailed some numbers out today, it is still a very cost-effective to the city. There is a large profit involved for the city, taking out our operating expenses.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to item number 4. Ms. Miranda.
Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the acting city manager to enter into an agreement for the construction work for the North Shore Bulkhead project.
Okay, this is the one of the projects under the Governor's Community Reconstruction Plan. There was $12.1 million earmarked for this North Shore Bulkhead project. Bids were received in the Departments of Public Works on September 5th. The low bidder was Woodstock Construction Group at a cost of $9,906,260. It's actually $1.5 million below the engineer's estimate. Woodstock is a reputable contract that has recently successfully completed construction of the Minnesota Avenue Pumping Station. The project includes installation of new bulkheads on the east side of Doyle Street, Saracen Canal, and Heron Street canals, and all West End street ends abutting Reynolds Channel, west of New York Avenue. The bulkhead located on West Bay Drive between Magnolia and Washington Boulevard will remain. However, the existing cap railing will be removed. The new concrete cap will be constructed atop the steel bulkhead. The existing rail will be reinstalled on the new cap, and existing steel bulkhead will be scraped, primed, and coated. The new bulkheads and caps will be installed at a base flood elevation, which varies but is generally between 9 feet and 10 feet and ABD in the project area. We anticipate commencing construction on this in November of this year. It's about an 18-month project, and once we receive a detailed schedule from the contractor, we will be meeting again, as we already had one meeting with all the residents that will live along those bulkheads to review how the work is going to proceed.
All right, are there questions from members of the council?
Just one, and I don't know if you have this done just off the top of your head. When this project is completed on the North Shore, about what percentage of city-owned property will have FEMA-compliant bulkheads?
Well, we'll be going out to bid for the critical infrastructure bulkhead, so I would say maybe about 50%, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that calculation, but we can certainly.
I didn't know.
Yeah, once the critical infrastructure bulkhead is done, pretty much that's all the public bulkhead is done.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, now we'll open up the floor to our public. Are there questions from the residents with respect to item number 4? Yes, Joe McKeon? Good evening.
Hi, you know, Michigan Street, West End. This is directed to John. Congratulations on this one.
Thank you.
Regarding the bulkheads, I sent you a letter, and I know you have a lot of things on the plate, a few of the councilmen have quite spoken with, about when the bulkheads are rebuilt, if there's a possibility of looking into restoring bay access to different parts of Long Beach. In the West End, for example, we have at least 10 streets that have over 50 feet, or approximately 50 feet. I think it's 48 feet exactly, where it's public land that is open to the bay. And in the east end, by the canals and those areas, it's approximately 30 feet at the end of each street that meets the bay. This is publicly owned property that I think would increase the value and the resident enjoyment of their areas, to be able to walk down with a roll down on wheels, a kayak, or a paddleboard, whereas many people I know are afraid to do this in the ocean, and as you know, it's not safe even for some continent swimmers to look something like that through there. So there are plenty of inexpensive and affordable floating docks made out of polyethylene that can be removed very easily. Literally, I mean, a few $1,000, $10,000, $15,000, you can set up something like that. Is that something that could be considered?
That could be considered down the road, but as part of this approval process with COSA, I don't think they would approve that for us at this point. But that's something the city could look at doing.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you very much.
I remember our discussions on this.
Yes, you
Great
I
idea.
spoke to
Yeah.
this meeting. Thank you very much.
Excellent idea, thank you.
Back.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we move on to item number 5.
Finally, item 5 is resolution authorizing the acting city manager to enter into 3 contracts for the construction of lifeguard headquarters and comfort stations with the lowest responsible bidders.
Okay, as a result of Hurricane Sandy, almost all the beachfront structures, including lifeguard headquarters, were destroyed. To date, we have reconstructed the following ones: Lincoln Boulevard, Comfort Station, Riverside Boulevard, Edwards Boulevard, National Boulevard, Grand Boulevard, and Minnesota Avenue. The only 3 remaining to be reconstructed are the comfort stations at New York Avenue and Neptune, as well as lifeguard headquarters at Riverside Boulevard. Bids were received in the Department of Public Works on September 9, 2019. The bid was broken down into 3 contracts to comply with the Wicks law. Wicks law requires that when a project is over $1.5 million, you have to bid separate general contract, separate electrical, and separate plumbing. So the results were as follows. The low bidder for general construction was Construction Consultants of Long Island, $3,002,000. Electric, the low bid was Hagman Energy Corp., $175,000. Plumbing was Macaron Plumbing Incorporated, $391,599 for total cost of the project of $3,568,599. To date, the city has spent approximately $8,258,107 to replace the 6 comfort stations at Lincoln, Riverside, Edwards, National, Grand, and Minnesota, respectively. The city was awarded $9,332,610 from FEMA. The Public Assistance Program for replacement of the structures, lines that were destroyed. Therefore, FEMA PA funds remaining are $1,062,502. Thus, the total city funding that is necessary to replace all line structures is $2,506,096.62. On average, $278,045 per building. The new structures are elevated, erected on piles, and comprised of precast concrete. And just one thing to the Compass Station at Neptune and New York, will also have a small lifeguard quarters for what they call the East Crew and the West Crew.
Any questions from members of the council?
In the resolution, it says that $1,447,822 will be available upon borrowing in February 2020. Is that bonds that have already been approved?
Those bonds are authorized, yes.
Just going down memory lane a little. I know Mr. Fabrizio was trying to use the argument of trying to replace square footage,
Correct.
square foot. I guess that kind of fell apart at the end, which is why.
No, actually, Joe, if it wasn't for Joe, we would have gotten $0 more from FEMA.
Oh, okay.
Joe did convince FEMA that they were replacing value. Joe convinced them what they really needed to replace was square footage. So what FEMA did based on Joe's recommendations, they went back, figured the total square footage of buildings that were replaced already, what the total cost of that was, came up with a per square foot cost, and then based on the total amount gave us that much more money. It actually gave us $2.1 million, Joe?
Yeah, basically we gave them $9.3 million, but they were offering about $7 million.
So essentially what we're doing, we exceeded the old square footage, that's why this.
Well, that's why it's more, because we
Right,
built more square.
that's what I was trying to, so we exceeded the old square footage.
In addition to, when we designed lifeguard headquarters, we wanted to really upgrade lifeguard headquarters, and that building is also being built so that in the future, if we get a generous donation from somebody, because there were a couple people that were interested, we can add a second floor to that. That will have an observation deck on the top, and it's actually a great spot. There'll be a glass railing around. It's a great spot for visibility on the beach, so, so there's plenty of depth to that building to be able to hit a second floor eventually.
Question, I see we're going to open it up to the public. I see Michael DeLore and then Elizabeth Preston.
Michael DeLore, Long Beach, New York. John, just to clarify, if you would, the current funding, if he's having in front of me, just something.
Yes, I have in front of me.
Current funding was $2,107,000. That's already been budgeted for and allocated. The 2020 city funding, and I apologize, Councilman, I just had one copy, is what is to be bonded for in February, the $1,150,000.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's some additional money that's coming from the Sandy Relief Fund bond that was passed to be able to cover additional costs in the project. That was a $10 million bond,
Right.
but it's still about 8.6 million available.
Okay. Part two of it, which is kind of related but unrelated. As far as private donations, that I heard that a member of the Long Beach Lifeguard alumni or some kind of affiliate thereof was willing to make a donation in memory of this person's relative. I don't know if that person or people or persons are still interested in doing that. I welcome it. That's part one. And part two is, since there are lifeguard stations, East Crew, West Crew, where they store their equipment, I don't know if there's any other alumni that would consider a making a donation in memory of above the access point for their equipment. This is all just means by which you can memorialize a former member and ability to raise funds and give some people the ability to reflect. You know, when you go to the beach, as you see memorial parks all over Long Beach. I think that's all I have at this point, but there will be questions. They'll reserve a bit of welfare. Congratulations.
Just so you know, the original person who was going to make a donation, a fairly sizable donation, had been brought to the city from some of the lifeguards, including the chief of lifeguards, and he withdrew his request for his support. So,
But it may generate in the future. Was that
sure, and that's why the building is designed to take a second floor.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Liz Trustin, Long Beach, just a quick question. I know that some members of the West End was in Minnesota that went up, they were surprised at what it looked like. Is there any rendition that people can see of the facilities before it's built?
Well,
Something that it looks like?
it's going to be very similar to the
one on Minnesota?
Yeah.
So it will look like the one on Minnesota
It will
with
be-
the availability of a second floor on top of that?
No, the ones at Neptune in New York will not have an availability for a second floor. Only the one at Riverside, and the one at Riverside is completely different. The lifeguard headquarters has been laid out with a communication room and other, shape-up areas, a spot for recreation to be able to talk to people about events that are going on. In addition, the front portion of the building is going to be all glass, going back about 10 feet, Joe?
Yes.
On each side, so that the lifeguards have an observation area for not only the observation deck, but also for the first floor. We sat down with the lifeguards and they helped really lay out that building. But the two bathrooms on Neptune in New York are going to be very similar to the Minnesota bathroom. And the reason was to keep a low profile and kind of try to match the wood, the fading of the wood decking around it. So.
But again, is there a way that people can see that? Because not everyone's going to go.
Yeah, we can have a copy of the rendering put up on the website.
Thank you.
Just one quick question, the lifeguard headquarters aren't going to have public bathroom space in the boardwalk in them, right?
The lifeguard headquarters only have an internal bathroom for the
For the
lifeguards.
lifeguards, but it won't be a public bathroom.
No, and there's a bathroom very close by.
Right.
Yes.
Are there any other questions from members of the public? Seeing none? Move forward.
On to the voting. Item 1 is an ordinance to amend the code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach regarding water and water distribution.
Yes.
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 Item 2 is a resolution authorizing the acting city manager to enter into agreements for auto body repair services for the city of Long Beach vehicles on an as-needed basis.
I will.
Yes.
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 Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the acting city manager to enter to and renew the agreement with the Atlantic Beach Foundation.
Yes.
I'd just like to thank Commissioner Kevins for all his work on this item. I vote yes.
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 Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the acting city manager to enter into an agreement for the construction work for the North Shore Bulkhead project.
I will. Yes.
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 Finally, item 5 is a resolution authorizing the acting city manager to enter into 3 contracts for the construction of lifeguard headquarters and comfort stations with the lowest responsible bidders.
I will.
Commissioner, Acting City Manager Miranda, I know this design and all the phases of this project were extensive and took quite a bit of time, and I just want to thank you for all of your work as well as your staff for all the work that went into getting this project off the ground. I think it's going to be great. With that, I vote yes.
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 City manager's monthly personnel report has been filed by the city clerk. Will make a motion to close the meeting.
I will.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Tackett, before you leave, if you could just stay for one moment, we just have 1 or 2 questions that were unresolved since the last 2 meetings. I appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to move forward with respect to our good and welfare portion, and I'm going to ask the commissioner to come forward at this time. Thank you for being here tonight, Commissioner. Most recently, there were questions with respect to the enforcement as relates to some vandalism in the canals area. And so now that the time has changed and it's darker earlier, will there be any additional police presence in the canal with respect to addressing some of the vandalism that's taking place?
Well, a very interesting thing happened with that. The individual that was doing the vandalism on the fences, his parents came forward and made restitution and assured us that they would take appropriate punishment measures to correct his behavior, and we haven't had vandalism since that incident.
Excellent. Second, for the past 2 to 3 meetings, there have also been some concerns with respect to having a police presence on East Walnut Street, right on the Roosevelt Boulevard. This is, again, there are many cars that are, for whatever reason, just completely ignoring the stop sign there, and there are 4 signs in that little intersection, and I had the opportunity to go over there, and within less than 5 minutes, I saw myself 9 people that just went completely straight through the light. So again, is there any way for us to address this? Because people are speeding en route to work, trying to get to the most part, I guess, that would be Lido Boulevard, and then also getting onto the Loop Parkway. And there are a lot of children that are passing. Is there anything that we can do to address that?
Yes, that is a bus stop, and we do have officers that do get posted there at times. In addition, we just resurfaced or reconstructed the city boulevard, which leads to a very smooth surface and is conducive. That's one of the unintended consequences of doing improvements, is that cars tend to drive faster. But we can definitely add additional enforcement in that area.
Okay, and then my last question is, I believe it was last week, some of the residents pointed out that there were a couple of signs that stated Ocean Beach Park and they were misspelled. I don't know if you were aware of that situation, but again, just once again, if there's anything that we're doing in terms of those signs to make corrections, or we're just going to wait until next year in terms of those Ocean Beach Park signs.
Yes, there were a couple of signs that lifeguard was spelled incorrectly. Those signs have been identified and removed, and I don't know who ordered them, but whoever did has to be a little more careful when they accept the order that they are made properly.
All right, are there any other questions for the commissioner before we move on to the good and welfare? Any other questions from members of the council?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you and your officers for providing the additional patrols in and around houses of worship over the Jewish holiday that just passed, and the continued increased patrols that are anticipated over the next few weeks as
the residents of serve the different Jewish holidays. So thank you very much.
It's our pleasure.
See no other questions. Thank you so much for your time, Commissioner. Have a good evening.
Could you please stay for my question? I would really appreciate it.
I'm not safe for the whole night, so
No.
if you want to send it to me or call me tomorrow, I'll be fine.
You should sit.
All right, we'll hear from Liz Crescent.
And he should be fired. What's this? He said something. That was rude. That's terrible. I could go up right now and say something. Yeah, you should. They might not be ready. Doing that. But you should tell them. Huh? You do.
Liz Preston, Long Beach. I have a couple of questions. First, Happy New Year to all. Is Mr. Capizola still providing any services to the city, to specific city personnel, or has his services been completed?
Mr. Capizzola is representing the city and its investigations, which are still ongoing.
Oh my God.
Mr. Capizola's response, not the draft, should be foilable, as New York State Controller has not stated that it is otherwise. Can we get a copy of that?
So,
His response, not the draft.
right, the draft audit, as you know, is non-final, and the response is an attachment to the draft audit. So once the audit becomes final, the response will be in the appendix, and at that point, it will be a public document. Until then, the New York State Comptroller's Office has asked us not to allow the default.
Can you produce that, where that says that it's not foilable?
It says it right on the face of the document, but I called the New York State Comptroller's Office and received a call back from their legal division, which asked us to keep it confidential until it was final.
The draft audit and the response, they're two separate.
I asked about the draft audit, but the response is about the draft audit and is an appendix to it. So until that full report is final, it's not subject to vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The Honorable Denise Ford. Good evening, Legislative Board. Thank you for being here this evening.
Good evening to everybody, and congratulations, Mr. Miranda, on taking on this evening.
Thank you.
Be crazy, but
Probably.
I just have a couple of quick things. This is a follow-up then, what Liz Trust was asking. When, since the state control now has, I guess, sort of has the city's response, when will the audit be finalized and be available for public review?
That's a good question for the New York State Comptroller. I don't know what deadlines they're operating under, and I don't want to speak for them or constrain them in any way.
Okay, and then I'd like to then know why, my question was, why didn't the city council get to review the letter, before the response, before it was sent up to Albany?
So if I may elaborate on that, I thank you for asking that question because I've been kind of waiting for a good opportunity to explain that. As an attorney, I'm an agent of the principal, all right? I derive I don't act in a vacuum, basically. I'm directed to act by my principal, and I act on behalf of the principal. What happened in this circumstance was the principal was the corporation counsel / acting city manager, Robert Agostisi, who put this assignment on me and Mr. Capizzola while recusing himself. He said, you guys are to submit this response. I don't want to see it. I don't want to have anything to do with it, but you are to submit this response on my behalf, on behalf of the city manager and the city, basically. So that's how it came to be. I regularly submit legal papers on behalf of the city without council approval. I think, certainly we have that ability under the corporation council section of the charter. But that's how this specific circumstance came to be. I was told by my boss that I needed to do something, and I did my job. And that was really it. I wasn't trying to, stir anything or create any controversy or anything else.
And I thank you very much for your honesty. And, but I guess when you say that you got it by principle, is that ending in PAL or PLE?
That question always confused me too.
Is it
the principals of your office then?
The-
Basically the tenants that which you serve the public.
I mean, the charter defines who my principals are. In this circumstance, it was the city manager / corporation counsel who supervises all the employees. At the time, I was an assistant corporation counsel. I would answer to the corporation counsel, who would then be answerable to the city manager and/or the city council. I know it complicates things when somebody has a dual role, but my assignment was clear. And my assignment was to draft a response with Mr. Capizzolo and to submit it.
Okay, so then when you think of, but the problem is that the principal in question basically was clouded and shrouded a conflict of interest, considering that he himself got additional payment and he was he's obviously under investigation. So when you think about this on behalf of the city, and I hope then as a question to all our city council members, that you take this seriously. You know, the fact that people can act independently without any input from anybody, that when we have seen, and I feel bad because I've lived in the city now for almost 40 years, and people who also live here pay taxes and have their trust put into the city government. But obviously, we've all realized now that the course of events, and thank you, John, for bringing this to our attention last year, that we've all been bamboozled. You know, we thought that everything was acting according to the best interests of the residents here in the city of Long Beach, when indeed it has not been. Because when you provide an answer, I mean, when you look at and you hear about excerpts from this draft from the state controller, that the payouts and what has been going on for so many years, and then it really cascaded into something even bigger under the tenure of Jack Schneerman, when you look since 2012, and based on who got what and 100% sick days, and you know, nobody can even provide any type of documentation to support any of these payouts. Then we look at this, and then when we look at, there's a draft audit that was sent for a response from the city, and so you have the city manager who got one of the payouts, who was basically under investigation, as you're saying, that there has been investigations going on.
But if I can be clear just about one thing, Legislator Ford, is that Mr. Agostisi recused himself from this project. I handled it alone with our outside counsel, and to my knowledge, he has never even seen the response.
Right, but let me remind you then, that outside counsel was not endorsed by the city council at all, because they didn't vote on his appointment. They have not voted on any of the monies that he's received. Have you voted for any of the money that he has collected? Have any of you said yes or no to any of this? So therefore, when you look at this, even though Agostisi recused himself, you allow the person that he hired to answer the response. And this is where I have an issue.
Well, to be clear, acting city manager Taggart hired him. He was the acting city manager at the time of his retention.
And let me remind you that acting city manager Taggart is also under investigation for a payout, though he still remains on. So what I'm asking you is that, and I understand you acted in accordance with what you thought was with the law, but I think that the law and some of the things need to be changed. I am saddened by the fact that the city did certify the letter that was sent out by then our now acting city manager. But then I want to know, have we received, as a follow-up also with Liz Tressens, and I'm sorry, because we're moving back and forth. Have you received from Capizzolo, whatever his name is, this lawyer, have you actually received the records of all of the hours that he spent so far, who he saw, who he interviewed, who did he meet with, and to justify and actually what we paid him so far? Do we have those records?
Yeah, Mr. Capizzolo submits legal bills, and as is the custom and practice of the lawyer profession, they write down what they do and the amount of time they do it, and they send you the bill.
And everyone on the city council has seen it?
No. I don't believe so.
The only information we were given is as of several weeks ago, he had been paid $92,000.
So I'm going to be quick now, okay?
Thank you.
Were subpoenas issued in regard to this investigation to any of the people here in the city? You're allowed to say it, because Madam Singh has said she can't comment, but in her letter to me, she said that if the people who received the subpoenas will admit that they received it, well, it's okay.
No,
Did anyone in the city?
Legislative Board, I really don't feel comfortable discussing an ongoing criminal investigation.
We just asked about subpoenas, that has nothing to do with the investigation.
And on every subpoena that I've ever received, whether it's these investigations or others, there's language about obstruction of justice and to keep the existence of the subpoena confidential. So with all due respect, I intend to do that.
Okay, now I hope then during this investigation that you actually look at all of this, and then even, one of the glaring facts when everybody says, well, they got paid and they got the hours and 100%, I really think, and I feel like I just keep banging this drum incessantly, is that I find it very interesting that nobody in the city brings up the second payment made to Jim Lockeruba, where he collected over $20,000 for when he worked the first 10 months out of the year as a temporary employee, not accruing any days, but yet he works for 2 months and gets a payout of over $22,000. You know what? I'd love to have that type of job to make that kind of money.
And just add something. You made a point. Mr. Kaminski made a point. He was doing what his boss told him to do, which is what he's supposed to do. His boss works for the council, and his boss chose to ignore the council's directive. And I think that has to be pointed out.
And thank you. And that's something, as a city council, you start looking at this charter and start realizing it's up to you, that you're the elected officials, okay? You appoint the city manager, but when that city manager, I mean, we do it in the legislature. You know, the county executive is actually elected on his own. But any time they want to appoint somebody to run a department, that commissioner has to come before the legislature to be approved, okay, so to show that we're all working together. This city has been operating in a vacuum for far too long, and the people who have suffered are the people sitting behind me, and they're going to sit with that outside the bill.
Thank you. Room secretary?
Hi, good evening. June Schechter, State Street. I've been here before. I'm going to beat the drum again. I'm here to register my disapproval and dismay at the actions of what is now called Mount Sinai / Oceanside Hospital concerning what amounts to a land grab in our neighborhood. To recap, Mount Sinai, formerly Oceanside Hospital, is attempting to use a residential parcel to construct a doctor's office complex. This proposed medical arts pavilion location is a residential parcel. As I walk along the street, I can see the paving stones that define driveways, the stumps of ornamental shrubbery that once decorated these parcels, representing what was a quiet, peaceful street. Not one of the residents in this area would oppose Mount Sinai's building this medical arts pavilion, doctor's offices, on the site of the former hospital, on the other side of Bay Drive. All of us oppose the current proposed location as it would forever alter the nature of our neighborhood, rendering it essentially a commercially zoned property in the midst of our homes. Adding insult to injury, Mount Sinai bought Long Beach Medical Hospital at bankruptcy prices, received FEMA money to restore medical services to our barrier island, diverted the bulk of that money to their Oceanside campus, giving us what was to be a temporary fix for an emergency room, which is now a permanent solution. Now, here's the elephant in the room. Mount Sinai can sell the undeveloped parcel of land, they have 5.2 acres approximately, after they use up all the FEMA money. So Mount Sinai wants to push this complex into the furthest corner of that parcel of land, into our front lawns, basically, to preserve the bulk of this parcel so that they could sell it off at a premium. Is this good for Long Beach? I say no. Why ruin a neighborhood for their greed and with disregard to the medical needs of our barrier island? Thank you.
I'm not sure if you're aware of the fact that during the previous meeting, I shared that I have been in conversation with the South Nassau Hospital, Mount Sinai, and I asked them if they were willing to meet with the members of North Bay, the Civics, as well as the East Home. They said that they were willing to do that, but they would not do that until, for the most part, the end of October.
Right.
And so we're going to hold up to that, and we'll make sure that meeting takes place.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
We didn't forget.
Okay.
All right, Sam Pinto?
Good evening, Sam Pinto. Just three comments within the welfare. First one, we just get a clarification on the equipment that was donated for capping rice and where it's going and how it was obtained.
Okay, we'll hear from the commissioner.
It was not through a FEMA grant, I know that much.
It was obtained through a FEMA grant, approximately just shy of $100,000, to purchase 3 new LifePak 15 cardiac monitors, defibrillators, pacers. One unit is going on the professional ambulance 2319. The second unit is going on the professional engine 2343. And the third unit will go on ambulance 2321. The units that are being replaced, the best one will go on the backup ambulance 2322, which is mostly manned by the paid firefighters also. And then we will have 2 spare units needed if one does break down. The grant was put through under the volunteer fire department. They paid for the grant writer, just like we've done previously for air packs, and they're given out through the entire department. It's not just for the volunteers.
I appreciate that clarification, so just so we understand that the grant is going to the City of Long Beach Fire Department, not the volunteer fire department, not to discredit anything we're to do, but the press release that went out Newsday as well as your opening statements tonight, just to clarify that it's going to everyone, not just the volunteers. Because some people reached out to me saying that may have been an intentional error, just to discredit the service that the paid force does, which I found hard to believe, and obviously thanking Commissioner Kevin for clarifying that. Second thing is, since that the Atlantic Beach Fire District contract has been approved, understandable. The only thing I asked that we were having a work session together with members of the unions to help better serve the residents and our traffic services, because it's news to me that this will be an overwhelming burden to provide the service for everyone, as well as any contractual obligations against us responding. While I have not received an official copy of the contract, I would be under the expectation based on old contracts that the paid force is expected to provide services as well and should not be cut out. Lastly, I just want to thank all the firefighters and first responders, EMS workers, paid and volunteer for their work this week. On Sunday, I had the opportunity to witness 2 fires, and luckily nobody was hurt. And it should show that there's a risk involved, and this is a good service that was delivered this Sunday, and I want to thank them for that. Thank you.
And thank you for all your service to our community. Roy Lester.
Just one thing to clarify, my information on the Long Beach Fire Department grant. There was no intention to single out anything, it's just that this was done through the volunteer fire service, that they applied for the FEMA grant. They were the ones that applied for it, that's all this message said. It didn't say it wasn't for the benefit of the whole fire department, so, it's not.
We understand, hopefully that's the right position. It just continuously said volunteer fire department while it was processed by the grant guys, because I know them, and it's going to 75% of the equipment or whatever it is.
Again, in the whole statement, I said volunteer fire department twice, okay? I'd also like to thank Fire Commissioner Kevin and the volunteer force for helping us obtain this funding. They're the ones that did it. I gave the credit where it belonged.
Well, it should go to the Long Beach Fire Department. That's pretty much where it
Well,
goes.
the equipment is going to Long Beach Fire Department, but I never cut the paid fire department out of here. Don't put words in my
I think
mouth.
Listen, as long as it's not a slide, I don't expect it to be a
I think
technical
there's
clarification.
a-
Absolutely was not a
There's a
slide.
press
And
release.
be recognizing who got the grant, that's all.
The
I
first
think
line.
there's a difference between the press release and the actual statement here, and I think what you're saying, basically just to translate, is that the language should be inclusive.
Sounds fair. Thank you
All
so much.
right.
Thank you for
Thank you.
clarification.
Try to get these ones out of the way quickly. Are we mandated to publish our meeting minutes from the city council meetings?
Please use your microphones
you can,
Yeah, we publish in the newspaper.
No, but it's also on the website. If you go.
No, I know on the website, I'm talking about the newspaper. We mandated to put it in the newspaper?
Yes, by truck.
Okay, I looked, I couldn't find that. All right, the other thing, I've been talking a long time about the boardwalk, the bike lanes and stuff. I just have some pictures to show you. We're allowing people to put tables and stuff like that all the way up to the bike lane, so people who are walking, anybody can take the pictures. I can't get across to you.
sure. I'd like to
So
see-
anybody who's walking there has to go into the bike lane. And the bike lanes aren't marked, I've been saying this
Yes.
on and on.
And we're aware of that, yes.
Yeah, and so I don't know why the city allows people to put their tables right up to the bike lanes, put the tables and the signs, but it's certainly a safety issue, and I just don't understand. Third thing is, have we gotten anywhere with the city manager search firm? Have you done anything with it? Or are we waiting?
Not at this time. We were really focusing in on the issue at hand, which was the response from the comptroller and the city council not being included in that final report. So we will have information for you.
Okay, and I guess I'm confused about that. As I understand from corporate counsel, you were mandated to give that to the comptroller's office.
I was directed by my boss to do an assignment and submit it. And I did.
But you didn't submit it until a new city manager was here, correct?
I submitted it on the date I submitted it. When it was done,
Which was just the other day.
It was submitted the week before I became city manager.
And nobody knew it? Because we sat here last time and we talked about a 45-day extension and to submit it, and nobody knew, and you didn't mention to anybody that you had submitted it already?
No, right after I submitted it, I sent it to the entire city council. And I told them that I submitted it.
So right after, so when you guys were here last week talking about a 45-day extension, you already knew it had been submitted? You knew, Ms. Moore?
No.
Well, he just said he sent it to you.
He sent the final report. He did not indicate that it was already sent to
He
the
had
city.
already
But
submitted it.
I'm answering your question. That's the whole purpose of us going through this, is the fact that the city council was left out of that process. When I attended the exit conference, right? When I attended that date, the whole purpose of me being there at the exit conference was to ask, on behalf of the members of the city council, that our response be included in that final report.
And that's why you asked for the 45-day
And
extension.
that's exactly
But
right.
what Mr. Kalinsky says is he had already given you notice that he had already given you.
Absolutely, and that's where we're having the contention. That's the issue at hand.
No, I don't understand. So you knew he had already submitted it? Okay, here.
I just want to clarify one thing.
Yeah.
I believe originally the extension was asked to September 30th. Councilman Bendo and I asked for 45 days.
No, September 30th was the original date.
I know
We had
that.
September 30th, according to the letter.
But this was handed in before September 30th.
Yes.
Well
That's
before
what-
September
Exactly,
30th.
and that's what makes it problematic.
Well, it's problematic because it seems that, Mr. Kalinsky, you handed it in, and the city, and then you, after you handed it in, you told the city council, then we were here last week discussing the 45-day extension, and you didn't say, or at least I didn't hear you say, oh, I already handed that in. What am I missing?
Anything.
I think the timeline is a little jostled. The meeting was held on that Monday. My understanding was it was submitted sometime after that.
No, I was just told it was submitted before
I'm
that.
just telling you my recollection. I wasn't at that meeting. I was.
No, but you just heard him say that, he submitted it before.
I wasn't included in that report either.
No, to be clear, it was transmitted to the comptroller's office after the exit, right after the exit conference, and then right after that, I provided it to the council. So that Monday, it was given over, but some of us didn't know that meeting actually happened, at which time that report was given over.
Tuesday, you sat there and you talked about a 45-day extension. Do you remember that?
Yes, Tuesday, 9/24, that is correct.
Right. Did you know that it had already been given in?
No.
We did, we asked that
It
it
would
be
be no
okay? I'm referring to the exit conference. This is moments before the report was sent in. It was not, I had no knowledge that when I walked out of the exit conference and got in my car to go to work, that this report was being sent. Because I would have, well, it was a waste of time for me to waste time at work when I was in the room asking them on behalf of the city council to do the two things. One, to allow our response to be included in that final report that was being sent to the state. That was my only reason for being there. And second, to ask for an extension. All right? Two items. Okay, after that time, two of the members of the council then issued a statement. They either issued that statement while I was in the room, after I was in the room, I'm not really sure, but a statement was issued asking for this extension, which is to Councilman Randall's point. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah, the extension was asked for last Tuesday. Last Tuesday, you guys sat down and said, we want a 45-day extension. That you did not, and the 45-day extension was to put in that report, so that we would not put in the report of the council hired by Mr. Agostisi, or
What we were
Mr.
trying
Kennedy.
to do is get the comptroller to not accept the report that the staff submitted, because it was not endorsed by the council. So we were trying to get this comptroller to not accept that report and give a 45-day extension so we could submit a report that there was concurrence on across the board.
Okay, so my question is, when was that report put in? It was put in right before the meeting when Mr.
Well, the exit interview was September 23rd, I'm going from memory, and I believe it was submitted that day, and then we were informed after it was.
Okay, so
Right,
I
and
mean,
because your time is up, I just want to just make sure that I make this clear. All members, all 5 members of the council received that report via email through Mr. Greg Kolnitzky at the same time. But in that email, it was not clear to us that this was it was final, that we would not be given the opportunity to move forward with sending our response. And I think we can go on and on, so I'm going to give you 1 minute for
Well,
summation.
I just don't understand. You knew at the time that a new city manager was being appointed that night or the next. You didn't know? You called the meeting for it.
That was later in the day.
So you didn't know until later in the day that you were calling a meeting to appoint a new city manager. I don't
Confirmed
believe
at
that.
that time.
I don't believe
You
that.
don't have to, but
Yeah.
that's the truth.
Okay.
You
So,
can ask Mr. Bender what time he arrived on Monday.
so at that point, you knew you didn't have to put in the response till the 30th. What was the rush?
You should be fine.
Are you asking me that
Yes.
question?
What was the rush? Why? You knew you didn't have to put in the response till the 30th. You knew Mr. Agostisi was
The response
resigning.
was complete, the exit conference was scheduled, and that's why we had the response ready early, because the comptroller's office wanted to schedule an exit conference, and I thought it would be fruitful to have something to discuss at the exit conference.
Even though you knew you had till the 30th.
All
Okay.
right, thank you, Mr. Mike Delury.
Good evening, Mike Delory. I'm not prepared for what I'm about to say. It's based upon what I just heard. Can we universally agree to request an extension till 45 days? I don't know your opinions. Maybe I'll poll the board. Councilman Bender, do you want an extension? Diane? Okay.
That's for 3 times.
Yeah, we've asked multiple times for an extension, publicly in letters.
Okay.
Did they have the opportunity to request that? I wasn't included in that, but I see you haven't asked me, and if you had asked me, I would have said yes, because that was the whole purpose of me attending the exit conference.
Well, I thought I asked it on September
No, you did not.
17th. On September 17th, I recommended an extension of 45 days. But, okay, let me try to move on to a topic. The optics are not good, obviously, and I'm speaking as I'm running as a city council candidate, that's number one, and people think that I know what's going on, which I don't. I'm just trying to get clarity so I understand the issue. I understand you said there's criminal investigations going on. But the optics of acting city manager 1, hiring outside counsel, then acting city manager 2 becomes also corporation counsel, who then on his exit directs his, I'll call it his second in command, to draft a response when you had till September 30th to reply. I'm just confused, and I'll move on. I don't expect an answer. I was asked, there's a Lions board meeting on this Thursday night, just to follow up on the water fountain. The one question I have is, members in the walks had asked what the orange dots are at the end of each walk. It's my understanding that, therefore, there's a design and engineering phase of the water program, as Mr. Moreno and I have been working on. I explained it to him. It's still it's in a target area of where the underground connections will be placed. There's other questions I'll say because I don't want to use up my time, but if you could answer that one question, Commissioner. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Mr. Fabrizio, thank you for all your work. You probably need extra staff because you're up there, John, and you're over here. But I thank you for all your service, but I'm sorry to interrupt.
The survey is going on out there, so you'll see different color marks out there.
Okay.
Orange marks will be for gas, red for telephone, underground telephone, blue for water, green for sewer. And the surveyor, what he'll be doing is doing all the elevations throughout the walks and marking where the existing mains and utilities are so that we can have a base plan to start the design to replace the water mains.
Okay.
And water services to the home. So we need a base plan first before we actually plot out how we'll finish.
Right, and then that orange mark would indicate gas line?
Orange generally indicates gas main, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, orange is telecommunication, yellow is gas.
So we'll see,
If it's just a dot, though, it's where they're surveying from.
Right. That may just be a
it
survey.
basically looks like a dot, it looks like a round.
It's a scratched T in it. That's
Okay.
how the surveys and elevation goes.
And I know Councilman Around, you had this topic on, your radar for years, and I know on behalf of the people that live there, which we appreciate it greatly.
Can anyone
thank you.
speak to the water fountain? Can anyone speak to the water fountain?
Yeah, we had the replacement parts, and we're just waiting to get the plumber over there to put the replacement parts in. And I asked the beach maintenance to try to get that done as soon as possible so that we can get the photo up with the lines up.
Yeah, and they did move the porta potty away, so
Yes,
that's.
yeah, so they're already starting to work on it, so.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you. Lou Dubas.
Just to clarify before Mr. Duval speaks, recently ACM Orlando did send a letter joining in the application for the 45-day extension. I think it's being reviewed by the rest of the council. So just so everybody's on the same page.
Thank
Good
you for
evening.
clarification.
Luke
Good
Duval,
evening.
Long Beach. Congratulations, John. John, congratulations.
Thank you.
I read that you were interested in actually having a job on a permanent basis.
Yeah, I would be, because I think I have something to offer, but it doesn't, when the new council comes in, if they don't feel I'm the right person, I'm fine with that too. I'm
Well-
happy working with my buddy Joe over there and getting all the work stuff done, so.
I think having you as the city manager would be a wise move for the city council to approve, and going forward, whoever might be on city council after that. I think they could stop the search after a year and a half, I guess it is, almost 2 years. Almost 2 years, right?
Yes.
Yes. Stop the committee. You have someone I think is well qualified. I think he knows the city well. And that's all I really have to say.
Thank you.
I just think that John, end the search, you have your manager.
Thank you. Leanne Baker.
Good evening, council members, Madam President, thank you for letting me speak. Mr. Miranda, I apologize for not congratulating you when I was up here first.
That's okay, thank you.
But congratulations, welcome aboard. Well, first, now you're not going to like what I'm going to say. You know, that little stunt here with Commissioner Cagney, he needs to retire. We need a new commissioner. That was ridiculous. That was rude. The reason why I asked for him to stay is because he came up here before you, made some statements which I don't believe are accurate, and I wanted to question him about it. When he said, oh, we have officers out there in that area who are stationed, I live in that area, I've never seen them. And what I have seen is some of our officers not driving at a safe speed while others do. And now I'm very pro-police, I'm very veteran, I love my shirt, you know what side I'm on. But, you know, when someone gets up here and they're making a false statement, I wanted to question him in front of everybody. And I'll tell you, if he's the commissioner of the police department, he should be here all night. If he's got a bedtime, then he should be in a different job. You know, that was rude. And the other thing I want to bring up is, okay, let's talk about, you know, when you talk about safety, instead of going out and doing petitions to go ahead and beg and plead for safety on our roadways throughout the city, which I think is dumb, I also want to state, I've been going out there talking to police officers, talking to our traffic, who I have found out have no police powers. They have name tags, which our police officers don't. The reason why I've been told by our officers why is that it's supposed to induce a conversation. That's dumb. Give them name tags so we know who they are. And two, you know, in speaking with our traffic, they don't have no police powers. They're just meter maids. They just give out parking tickets. That's it. And I sat there with our traffic out in that area of Roosevelt and Walnut, and we were just watching people speeding by, and they don't care. They got the big van out there that says traffic, and they're just like, woo, and they keep going. And that happens in other parts of our city, too. And when I was talking to our law enforcement out there on the street, because I've been walking up and asking everybody, you know, how does this work? What do you think? Many of our law enforcement say we need to have a proper traffic division with law enforcement in there who have the ability with a traffic car to pull over, give tickets, and implement these unsafe road conditions that we're enduring. Because I'll tell you, at a stop sign, not only do you have one ticket, you have two tickets. You have a person speeding, obviously, because they are driving too fast for road conditions to stop. Two, they're failing to stop when they go through that stop sign. That's two tickets that they should be getting hammered on with a fine by our judge for the city. And then anybody who knows the vehicle code would know that, you know, that could get you into bigger and better things. I mean, that's where you get more suspended driver's license, you get drug offense, you get a whole bunch of other things. Felony warrants, I can't even begin to tell you what that opens up. And how do I know this? I know this because I worked for a police department before. My legal knowledge is a wealth of telling that we need to reevaluate, Ms. Miranda, in your position, you gotta reevaluate how we operate. Because, you know, with what's going on with our former ACM, Mr. Atkins, and everybody involved, I better see a lot of people going to jail. Thank you. Injustice.
Good evening, Jay Gus, Long Beach. I'm going to apologize. This is a little out of order. I'm just kind of riffing on what I heard earlier, comments by others. Regards to Mr. Cavazzolo's retention by the city, I believe Mr. Calmetti said that he was representing the city. His representation of the city is ongoing because of the investigation. But I read Mr. Cavazzolo's retainer agreement, and it states pretty unequivocally that he was hired to represent the city in connection with a grand jury subpoena. That's actually in bold letters in his retainer agreement. So I'm wondering if his retainer agreement has been amended to broaden the scope of the services that he has been provided. Do you want to answer, or do you want me to keep going?
I believe the investigations are in connection with the grand jury subpoena, and he's provided invaluable help. He's reviewed thousands of documents.
Yes, not time to be on this comments, right?
No.
Okay, fine, proceed.
That's all I have to say.
The New York State Controller's audit does not involve the grand jury subpoena. Isn't that his principal responsibility? Responding to the New York State Controller's audits, draft audits, which has nothing, there are no grand jury subpoenas issued in connection with the New York State Controller's audit. So please help me understand that.
There was mixed questions of law and fact in the comptroller's response that Mr. Capizzolo, because of his assistance in other matters, was uniquely situated to assist him. So I believe there is a nexus to it.
Did the New York State Comptroller ever impanel the grand jury as part of its audit?
You know the answer to that question, Mr.
I
Capizzolo.
think the people behind me want to.
I don't. Come on now. No, the New York State
Okay.
Comptroller doesn't.
That's fine, no, it's fine, I got it. I also want to ask, you mentioned that the response submitted by Mr. Capizzolo is not subject to FOIL audit. You've been advised by the New York State Comptroller's Office that it should not be disclosed in response to FOIL requests. I want to know if you have any documentation substantiating that the New York State Comptroller's Office told you to treat Mr. Capizzolo's response in this fashion and make it unavailable on the FOIL request, or is this a verbal conversation?
Let me be very clear, okay? They weren't talking about Mr. Capizzolo's response when I spoke with them. They were talking about the draft audit. And the response is responding to that draft audit and will become appended to it. So as far as I'm concerned, that's an interagency communication. That's part of a non-final audit and therefore is not subject to FOIL.
So you're interpreting your guidance from the New York State Comptroller's Office as affirming that the response as part of the final audit is not subject to FOIL?
I think that the New York State Comptroller wants to get this over with sooner rather than later, and once that happens, everyone will have the document, and I look forward to everybody reading it.
Is there any compelling reason why the public shouldn't have access to this document now? It's going to become public at some point anyway.
Because the New York State Comptroller deserves an opportunity to respond if they so choose.
I'm going to ask you again, did they tell you not to disclose it?
They told me not to disclose the draft audit, and I consider this as part of it because it's commenting on the draft audit.
Okay, so
and
I'm
a
gonna take
response
that as
wouldn't make sense if you don't have the draft audit to look at. It's just a response, right?
Okay.
We're responding to things in the draft audit.
So in other words, all right, I'd like to comment on this, the letter, Mr. Bender read it to the record earlier. I'm appreciative of the council majority writing a letter to the controller asking for an opportunity to amend the city's response. Because at this point, we're not asking for an extension. It's already been submitted. What we're really asking for is an opportunity to amend it. I'd like to point out that, as best as I can tell by that letter, that this answer or response to the draft audit was submitted against the wishes of the city council, and I think that's something you guys need to take a look at yourselves and address internally. But it also needs to be pointed out that we never should have found ourselves in a position of having to ask for a second bite at the apple. The council had numerous opportunities to prevent the Capizzolo response from going in and becoming the official response of the city, but quite frankly, due to lack of third vote, you guys blew it. These previous opportunities were wasted. I hope that the controller grants the council's request for an opportunity to amend. And I believe that the council, as the people's proxy, the people vote for you to represent us, are the proper party to be putting in that response on behalf of the city, and not some appointed political hacks who do not answer to the voters and who will in all likelihood be gone come January.
All right, Mindy Denson. Good evening.
Good evening. I have three separate things I want to discuss with you.
Can you just move your mic?
Mindy Delbert, Long Beach. I have three things I want to discuss with you. First off, Mr. Miranda, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I agree with Mr. Dobbs. I think you would make a great city manager permanently.
Two thank yous.
Okay, so Mr. Kalininski, you said something about the city of Long Beach vehicles, that they are not supposed to be used for personal use?
They shouldn't be used.
They shouldn't be used. So I just want some clarification. I've had company vehicles with other jobs in my career path, and I did not have two vehicles. I didn't have a car. The company vehicle I used for personal use. So I'm curious, do you expect my Long Beach neighbors to have two vehicles? One for their
working and one for their personal use, because that is just ridiculous.
I mean, I don't expect anything. I don't set the policy, and any answer I provide to that question that you just asked is just going to be purely speculation, so I can't really answer it. I'm sorry.
Okay, I just don't understand why you're suggesting that Long Beach employees would have two vehicles. Why shouldn't they have?
It's not uncommon for government employees who are given a vehicle to take home, not just in Long Beach, but in other municipalities as well, to have an additional vehicle to use for their personal use, so that taxpayer money is not
Okay.
used for them to, for individuals. It's the purpose of giving a take-home vehicle is usually because that person is either on a 24-hour response call or they're expected to do something with the vehicle related to their position. So that's usually why a person is given that car. I can't speak for every single person that gets a car, but generally that is the reason. And there is an expectation that a person will have their own vehicle. That's really is commonplace for municipal employees.
Okay.
Just a note too on that, employees that have take-home vehicles that could be on call are imputed onto their salary as it's shown as income. We have to do a calculation at the end of the year of how many commuting miles we used. That's changed into a income that gets added to your actual income, and then you're taxed on that by the
Right.
states and the state.
I
You did that with prop,
I understand that. I mean, obviously, you look at the miles and the personal versus that. I understand that. Okay. All right. The other thing I wanted to bring up, so Mr. Lester brought up the tables on the boardwalk, which I was very happy he brought that up. There definitely is. Over the years, with the fairs happening, I did notice that the tables got further and further and further out. So they're not being, when you have tables on both sides, there really is no availability of walking. You are literally like sardines walking down the middle of the
Absolutely.
boardwalk.
I've experienced the
For
same
somebody
thing.
that is walking with a walker or even in a, whatever, any type of apparatus, if somebody is walking with crutches, it is so difficult as far as accessibility. I mean, it is just crazy.
Absolutely, and I just want to just speak to that for one moment, only because this was mentioned during our work session on the 24th, and Acting City Manager Miranda spoke to the fact that we are establishing a bike safety committee, and so that will also address some of the issues with respect to the bike lanes, right? So, in other words, we're going to address some of these issues. All these things are going to come out with respect to different committees that we're going to have. All right, so I think that it's important that we follow up on this, but we look at everything in terms of the boardwalk, in terms of safety, but also making sure that people have access, because access is critical. There must be equal access on that boardwalk, but also if you're just a pedestrian, you're walking, you should have some space, you should have mobility.
Exactly.
And this is something that we're definitely going to look at in terms of having conversations with our residents. It's very important that we receive feedback. And again, this will be another outgrowth of conversations that we will be having in the future with members of our community.
I think there was a period of time where the tables weren't as far out as I mean, obviously the boardwalk got wider. So you give an inch, you already take a yard. So I think that's really ended up what happening. I mean, the tables got wider, everyone's space got bigger. So, okay, I think that was all I had. In the story of Mr. Tagney, the woman was talking about she didn't know because she didn't see Mr. Tagney. I just want to make she wasn't out there 24/7. I'm sure Mr. Tagney was out there even if she didn't see Mr. Tagney out there. Mr. Tagney does do an amazing job.
Benji, one of the recommendations I made on the boardwalk and the bike lanes is Allison Blanchett has come up with a scheme that might help really put some great signs out in people's ways. So I've asked the council that we should appoint a committee of some active walkers and some active bicyclists to come up with some ground rules. Would you like to serve on that committee?
Absolutely.
Okay, if you'd reach out to me.
I will contact her.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Okay. Wonderful.
All right, thank you. And last but not least, Ivy Hess.
very much. Eileen Hessian, Long Beach. I did have some things to say about the whole Capizola overpayment situation, but the only thing I'm going to say is that several people on the dais tonight said to be perfectly clear, and let me make this clear, and I want to make this clear, and I just want you to know it's not clear. And most of the city feels that way too. Everyone is very confused about this, so I hope that eventually we get down to brass tacks and find out what really is going on. A small issue that I had brought up many months ago with Agostisi was that at the Magnolia Child Center, former employees seem to be sending their children there and not paying their bills. He said he was looking into it, but nothing ever came of it. So it's a small amount of money, comparatively speaking, to the millions of dollars Newsday keeps talking about, but still, take a look at it.
We'll follow up on that.
Thank you. Is there a moratorium on hiring? I understood a letter was sent out that we're not supposed to hire anybody for a while. Was there a moratorium on hiring?
No moratorium on hiring, we need to keep the staff, but the issue is that, well, Mr. Agostisi was the acting city manager. Is this on?
Yes.
Was the acting city manager. The council had asked him to run all approvals by them. I've asked the council to, if they want to continue with that or to put it back in where the charter says that the city manager makes those authorizations. And if the city council is going to take that responsibility, then we should change the charter. But we did have to make some appointments at Magnolia Senior Center because they were short-staffed. They bring back part-timers every year for the season, and they were already on board, so they weren't getting paid working for nothing. So I already moved and signed those PAs so to make sure we have a smooth operation. Same thing with any resignations or terminations for seasonal employees. I've signed off on all those so that payroll can keep up with its records and what have you. So
I understand emergency hirings, but I hope you understand the spirit with which I asked that question, that we not hire people who are just not really that necessary.
any hiring that we would do, I would assure is within our budget and people that are in place, people that are missing.
All right, also, in the letter that John Bendo read at the very beginning of the meeting, I suppose that is asking for getting an extension or amending the original letter that said the city's response was final, right? We're trying to change that. We're trying to get the comptroller to look again.
Right, and this goes a little bit to the confusion you were talking about. What's going on here, to some degree a little bit, is sort of a battle for the soul of Long Beach and who runs Long Beach. Is it the staff or is it the elected officials? In this particular situation, with the investigation and this response, the staff has consciously decided to leave the city council out of the process. So the response submitted was a staff response. It was not a response endorsed by the elected officials. And if you look at the organizational chart of the city, the residents are at the top, then it's the city council, and then you have the staff structure underneath. So we have a little bit of a governing crisis going on right now over who's in charge. There are some staff right now that seem to be taking the position that they run the city, not the council. And that's kind of where we're sitting right now. So that's what's going on here. It's a little back and forth of, we think, I'll tell you right now, I'm prepared to call a special city council meeting and put a resolution forth to retract that response to the audit that was submitted and make it official to the comptroller that the city council is officially wants that retracted. I need 2 other votes on the council here to do that. If we're going to do that, we also probably need to pass a resolution to take it out of the staff's hands, the process. That's kind of where we are. We can't do anything without.
Well, I hope they don't have to do the resolution. I hope that this will, I mean, Mr. Miranda, you wrote it saying that it was the final thing. I hope that you will backtrack from that because it was very anti-resident. We need to know what goes on with that audit. We need to know if Mr. Agostisi is going to get another overpayment. All this stuff really needs to be looked at. And I thank John Bendo for months ago, a year ago, whenever it was, for being maybe the first council person to ever read the budget and the documents and be able to find what's happening and start this whole process.
Let me clarify. The night I was appointed, they asked about sending this letter. The next day, I got one email from Councilman Bendo with several different options of how to proceed on getting this extension. Okay? I had conversations with 3 other members of the council.
Which ones?
Verbal counsel. The only member I wasn't able to speak to in either way was Councilman Mendel, who I spoke to on Saturday after the letter was sent because he was in the process of moving his office, so he wasn't able to get back to me with emails. Based on all those conversations, my intent was to let them know that Bob Agostisi, the past city manager, had authorized the submittal of that thing. He recused himself from it. As far as I know, he wasn't involved. Greg tells me he wasn't. I believe that. So that was the official response from the city. I did ask for an extension, and I did ask for additional input to be allowed from the council. So with not having a clear direction from the entire council, I wanted to make sure I preserved our right to get an extension and preserve the right for council members to add to that response. Maybe I could have took better wording for the first part on that was the full response of the city, because at the time that wasn't the full response of the city, wasn't done under my authorization, it was done under the previous city manager. So
I believe Mr. Agostisi did recuse himself from that day, but I don't think he recused.
Session. If I could just clarify something
Please
that Commissioner Miranda just said. While I appreciate the recitation, I think we differ in our recollections. I didn't receive a communication from your office until 5 o'clock that night that the letter went out. I received no telephone call, no voicemail, no email saying, I have a draft letter that I'm thinking of sending out. You called me on Friday morning, was when I was moving my office, and we spoke on Saturday.
right, we did speak to Saturday.
Right, but there was no prior communication or an attempt regarding this letter.
No, there was a communication here from you, because based on Councilman Bendo's email, which was sent out to all the council members, there was no email response of anybody.
But there definitely wasn't an email saying, council, here's a draft letter that I'm thinking of sending.
No,
Should I not hear from
no,
you?
I did it based on conversations and.
With 3 other council members.
Right.
Okay, much clear.
Yeah, no, and my intent was I did try to call you Friday morning first.
The night that
No,
you
but
were
let's
chosen city
go back a
manager.
little bit, because I think, again, we're trying to be clear here. As you said, you were not notified, you didn't know, because he didn't send out an overall email to all of us saying, I'm gonna send this out. So I think all of us here, I believe everyone that's here on this dais can agree to the fact that we were not notified that this was going out.
This is
And
what
that's-
I remember.
Hold on, let me finish, and that's why we sent out an email as a council saying that we were concerned. There are emails that have been going back and forth that we have not shared with the public about this issue, but we have been having conversations about it because of the fact that we were all shocked that the information went out without our consent. So I think we need to be clear about that no one here sitting up here knew that this was going out before it went out.
If I could just, with all due respect, I don't understand half of what was just said.
Okay.
When
What
we
do
reviewed
you
Tuesday
understand?
night, Tuesday night, we asked publicly if there could be a request, now knowing that the report was submitted, that there could be a request for a 45-day extension. Next thing, we get a response from the controller saying that they received the report, they can only accept the report from one report from the missed out. And my interpretation of that letter was they left some room open, whether or not that was actually the report they were going to accept. They also said they would entertain an extension.
Yes.
I believe it was either that night or the next night we had our working meeting, which when we get requested a 45-day extension be asked for. The next communication I received, I can't speak for other council members, was at 5 o'clock saying this letter went out. I then received communication from Commissioner Miranda saying did speak with 2 council members, which in his defense, we are the bosses. If 3 council members give a directive to he has to follow that. I can only say I was not one of those 3 council members. I don't know, I can't speculate who was, but if that's what his directive was, he's got to follow that. I received a communication from him Friday morning, we spoke on Saturday. That's my understanding of the timeline and all the emails I have back in.
I have the same emails, but in those emails, and again, an email that was sent to the entire council, I also said the same thing, that the information that I received was at 5:13 after the email had already gone out.
This is what I recall. The night of the special meeting, when you were chosen to be the acting city manager, 2 things were asked. Mr. Mandel, you said, here on, in the future, can we get some kind of recommendation that the council members know that they are all included in communication? You asked that question, Mr. Miranda said, yes, we will do that, and in fact, you put it in writing the next day. Then Mr. Bendo asked for the 45-day extension, and you said, yes, you would ask for that. So those are 2 things that went wrong.
Could I just ask a clarification?
Did you get the email from Mr. Bento?
I did.
Yeah, that had several choices that changed from what was said at the council meeting. That's why.
The special email.
No, they just had different options, they didn't have anything saying the normal rules for extension. Councilman Moore?
Yes.
Is it your recollection, the first you heard about this letter going out was after 5 p.m. that night?
That is
You
correct.
had no prior communication knowing that there was an intent for a letter to go out,
No.
no response?
No. Why?
Mr. Miranda, was that your
Because
recollection?
that's in my email to the entire council that I was disappointed that the entire council was not notified.
Then
I
who was the
received a
person who you
call.
spoke with?
I received a call at 5:13 from Mr. Miranda saying, talking about the nature of his response. But it was not my understanding that it had already gone out at 4:59.
Mr. Miranda, who were the 3 council members you spoke with before you sent that
I
letter?
had a conversation with the council earlier in the day about it.
So you did have a conversation?
Yes, we had a conversation earlier in the day with the actual. There was
Now,
no
that's-
direct-
Can we hear you?
I have one,
Speak to
I
the
have one
mic.
message on my phone now. You let
Thank
me
you very
know.
much.
No, wait, you stay here for a minute, 'cause let's get to the bottom. I received a message from them, it was a text message asking me to call in. The phone call came in at 5:13 on my phone. I returned that call, okay? Whatever message was sent out, it's impossible because I was in a meeting at 4 o'clock, all right? So there was no communication before that time. I received a call at 5:13 on my phone, and had a conversation about what was said. When I got home and I checked the email, it said 4:59, a message went out to the entire council. So yes, we did have a conversation, but that conversation was that conversation was had, not understanding that the message had already gone out. So, and that's the whole reason why I sent out a message to the entire council saying, I'm disappointed in the action.
My first comment was, it's not clear.
It's not clear, that's it. We want to thank the Long Beach Auxiliary Police for their presence this evening. We thank you for coming out. Have a great evening.